The Chinese Communist Party is helping some African dictators crack down on political opposition using mass surveillance. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode has been sponsored by Surfshark, because if your government is trying to spy on you, you can use Surfshark to help protect your identity online. So, Africa. Most African countries have a lot of needs. Safe drinking water, mass transit, better healthcare. But you know what these African governments really ought to spend their money on? Surveillance. Yeah, that's the ticket to a bright future. Which brings us to China. The Chinese Communist Party has been accused of colonizing Africa. They're not interested in occupying and ruling African countries directly. But the Chinese Communist Party is helping prop up some of the worst dictators in Africa. There are many, many ways China does this. But today I'm going to focus on one way: mass surveillance. You've probably heard of the Chinese telecom company Huawei. It's technically a private company. Maybe. But it has strong connections to the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party. Huawei is being used to build a vast surveillance network in African countries. They're even training police in how to use their technology to crack down on anyone who questions that country's government. A lot of African dictators simply don't have the resources to build their own surveillance network from scratch. So they turn to China for help. Through multi-million-dollar deals with Huawei, they're bringing China's techno-autocracy to one of the poorest continents on Earth. Because sure, people may not have clean drinking water, but at least they have Huawei security cameras on every corner.
The Chinese giant supplies most of the 3G and 4G cell towers, and surveillance cameras equipped with facial recognition. Even in this village where a lot of the homes don't have electricity, there's a brand new set of surveillance cameras behind me.
That was from this Wall Street Journal investigation. Huawei is building the backbone of future 5G networks, but it's also building surveillance systems around the world. The Wall Street Journal investigation looked at police documents and parliamentary committee documents. They interviewed diplomats, cyber defense officials, and opposition activists who have been targeted, plus more than a dozen senior security officials working with Huawei in African countries. They found that Huawei is actively making countries in Africa a worse place to live, at least if you're not part of the ruling elite. The Wall Street Journal investigation says, according to senior security officials, embedded, hands-on Huawei technicians train security forces and cyber surveillance units that regularly snoop on political opposition. For example, in Zambia, Huawei technicians helped the government access the phones and Facebook pages of a team of opposition bloggers running a pro-opposition news site. Good! So Huawei is helping African dictators silence political opponents. Then there's also what Huawei calls safe cities, or smart cities, that they're trying to build in Africa. What's a smart city? Let's ask our friendly Huawei representative.
What is smart city? Briefly speaking, it helps governments enhance city management quality and efficiency.
Wow, incredibly vague yet terrifying. I want to know more.
With the development of city construction, video surveillance is widely used in various scenarios, such as city security surveillance, transportation surveillance, and campus surveillance.
Oh, good. Campus surveillance. Now countries around the world can be more like China, spying on students. You wouldn't want students thinking too freely. Huawei says it has built systems in 700 cities spread across more than 100 countries and regions. Not all 700 are smart cities, but in these cities, some of the smart city components are gradually being installed, often starting with things like surveillance cameras. And then there's the internet. China is exporting its model of the internet to Africa. In China, the internet is not a forum for the free exchange of thoughts and ideas. It's a way for the government to monitor and control people. And the Chinese Communist Party wants to export its authoritarian model of the internet around the world. Africa is a prime testing ground. Why? Because most African countries are poor, meaning they don't have a lot of homegrown technology companies to compete. And many African countries are authoritarian, meaning they prefer China's model of a highly controlled internet. Chinese government officials have helped secure internet deals for Huawei throughout Africa, starting as far back as 1998 in Kenya. 20 years later, Huawei has been responsible for connecting hundreds of millions of Africans. It has built telecom networks in some 40 African nations by offering inexpensive deals, often financed by loans with favorable terms, and providing on-the-ground customer service. Because of that, Huawei now dominates the African internet market. And on the one hand, that's a good thing. More people in Africa now have access to the internet, especially through their mobile phones. But the Chinese Communist Party had a long-term plan. According to the NGO Freedom House, most of sub-Saharan Africa is not free. When those dictators realized the threat internet access posed to their regimes, they again turned to Huawei for solutions. And things got worse. As the Wall Street Journal says, a few years ago, the East and Southern African nations appeared to be regional models for web freedom. But thanks to Huawei, that's begun to change. Huawei is bringing China's model of a highly controlled and censored internet to Africa. And let's just say, Africa's dictators are very happy. So what do you think about China and Huawei's plan for the internet? Tell me what you think in the comments below. And this episode has been sponsored by Surfshark. When you go online, everything you do is being tracked and logged by the websites you visit and your internet service provider. In many cases, by the government, especially if you're in, say, Africa, where this kind of tracking can put you at risk of surveillance and even arrest. That's why you should use a VPN, like Surfshark, to protect your identity. When you use Surfshark's clean web mode, you'll be protected from ads, trackers, and malware, and phishing attempts by hackers from Uganda. Plus, with Surfshark, you can connect as many devices as you want. Try it out with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Plus, Surfshark has a special discount for China Uncensored fans. Go to surfshark.com/uncensored and use the code UNCENSORED to get 83% off a 2-year plan and 3 additional months free. Protect yourself online. Click the link below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.